the life of a fisherman, it never gets old. So welcome to the show, come on yo, we're going Ike.
Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Want to talk to you about another key bait for me when the water's cold. Wintertime, cold water conditions. We're talking about water from the 30s all the way up to 50 degrees. This thing I'm holding right here is a mainstay for me anywhere I go when that water's cold. And it's a jerkbait, specifically a suspending jerkbait. Want to tell you a little bit about the bait choices for me, and then the line and the rod. But I really want to talk to you about the retrieve, and that's the key to a suspending jerkbait. You know, let's talk about the bait first. And one of the key things in picking a jerkbait is the diving depth. And if you look at the bill on that jerkbait, and this is the Rapala Shadow Rap Deep, it's got that big bill on it. And I use two variations of suspending jerkbaits. I use the standard bill, which is a short bill, and I use that deeper bill version, the long bill version. And the simple determiner of when to use each version is the water depth. So from 0 to 7, 8 feet deep, I use a standard bill on my suspending jerkbait, a short bill. But when that water is 8, 9 foot or deeper, all the way to 15 foot, that longer bill suspending jerkbait has been a big key for me. Super key to getting that bait a little deeper. You know, the next thing is the line. I get a lot of questions about what's the right line choice for a suspending jerkbait in cold water. The simple answer, fluorocarbon. Gotta use fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon has so many advantages. It's got less memory, it's got a little less stretch, it's clear, it's invisible, fish can't see it. But the number one reason I'm going to use fluorocarbon when using that jerkbait is because the fluorocarbon sinks, it's a dense line, and you're going to let that bait suspend better and get down to the depths better with fluorocarbon. I use Berkeley Trilene 100% fluorocarbon for all that stuff. Next thing is the rod and the reel. You know, for my rod when I'm jerkbait fishing, I want to pick a little bit shorter rod. I want to pick a rod that's 6 foot to 6.5 foot long. That's a shorter style casting rod. And specifically, I want to look for a rod that has a shorter butt section. This is a rod by Abu Garcia called an Ike Series rod. It's the Delay Series, and it's a 6'4" medium action rod. I designed this specifically for twitch style baits, just like a jerkbait. Short rod, not a long butt, so cadence is important. We're going to talk about that in a second. The other thing on the rod is I want a rod that has a softer tip when I'm jerkbait fishing. I want a little bit of that parabolic action to that tip. I either want a composite or a glass rod that has that softer action. You know, on the reel choice, I like a reel that has a slower gear ratio because in cold water, you're generally going to be fishing a suspending jerkbait slower. So drop down in your gear ratio to something from a 6'4" to 5:1 gear ratio. That's an Abu Garcia Revo, perfect reel for that type of fishing. But the most important thing, and this is really what I want to talk to you about, is the key to fishing a suspending jerkbait in the winter is finding the right cadence. And when I say cadence, all I mean by cadence is the rhythm or the action that you're imparting on that jerkbait. The real simple rule of thumb for fishing this bait, the colder the water, the slower that cadence, and the longer your pauses. The warmer the water, the faster that cadence, and the shorter the pause time in between your twitches and jerks. But here's an important thing to remember, is let the fish tell you what cadence they want. So the way that I do that on any given trip on a lake is I change my cadence about every 15 or 20 casts. I'm going to change my cadence up. So if I get to a place and the water temperature is 40 degrees, I'm going to start out my first 20 casts. I'm going to make that cast. I'm going to reel it about 5 times, and I'm going to jerk it twice, boom, boom, and I'm going to pause it for 5 seconds. Jerk it twice, pause it for 5 seconds. I'll do that for 20 casts. If I don't get a bite, I'm going to change my cadence for the next 20 casts. I'll make that cast on my 21st cast. I'll reel it down about 5 times. I'll hit it once. I'll let it sit for 7 seconds. hit it once, let it sit for 7. And I continually change that cadence until I find what the fish want on that given day. The pause length and cadence are so key to generating strikes on this bait in the wintertime, in the cold water conditions. Change your cadence, find the rhythm the fish want for that given day, and you're going to catch more fish. Mike Iaconelli talking about cold water fishing with one of my favorite baits, a suspending jerkbait.
When I fish like him, you know I'm fishing hard. You might wanna say that I'm going Ike.